Hey, it's Cris Chico, and I'm going to answer the question, proof of funds. Do you need a proof of funds from your buyer, or is it worthless? I would argue that proof of funds are absolutely worthless when it comes to you trying to vet a buyer. And I want to make sure that this is really a simple but yet very important thing for you to understand, because you could spend so much time, energy, and effort in trying to find yourself your next real estate deal where you're going to make a ton of money, and you talk and negotiate with sellers. You finally get a deal in the contract, and then you finally feel that, my goodness, this is it. I am finally going to have my deal that I'm going to make, my first wholesale deal, and I'm going to make money from this. And then you end up selling it to the wrong buyer. They don't close. The contract falls out for you. And then in the end, you make no money. Now, that would be tragedy. And yet it happens all the time. And one of the problems that I see is that people get worthless proof of funds. Now, I am saying here worthless proof of funds. So there's a presupposition that there might be proof of funds that are not worthless. I would argue that all proof of funds are absolutely worthless, because there's so many places on the internet that you can go out and get yourself a proof of funds letter. You can show a bank account. There's so many things you can do to either fabricate or give the appearance that, yeah, you're a real strong buyer and you're going to go through this thing. But at the end, there is only one thing. There's actually two things that can prevent you, to make sure that you don't fall victim to a worthless proof of funds, and then in the end, you end up losing out on your deal. Now, the first thing is, of course, that you need to subscribe to the channel. That is always the thing that's going to save your deal, because if you don't subscribe to the channel, you're not going to get my tips. Let me tell you some stats. Do you realize I get hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people that have watched the videos, and there's 50% of you. 50% of you watch the videos and are not subscribed. What is that? What's going on here? I'm not asking too much. I'm just saying, go ahead and subscribe if you are not a subscriber. Do that. If you want to go crazy, if you really want to say, Chico, man, I want to add more money to the tip jar, then you can, of course, hit the notification bell, give me a thumbs up, and also a comment. But that's all I ask. If you are already subscribed, make me a comment and give me a thumbs up. Now, let's get to this at hand. There is only one thing, absolutely one thing, that is better than any proof of funds letter that you're going to get out on the internet. And you know what that is? That is a big fat deposit from your buyer that is non-refundable. Okay? Because the bottom line is that, and again, the deposit is relative to the deal size. So, but at the end of the day, if a buyer gives me a proof of funds letter, if a buyer gives me a bank statement, and he's buying a property from me for $130,000, $150,000, he shows me a bank statement with $800,000 in it, $1 million. Like, he's showing me, like, man, I got the money. Well, you know what I'm going to say? Oi, no problem. On that deal, I need a $5,000 non-refundable deposit sent to my title company. And here's a document you're going to sign that if you try to wiggle out of this, I'm going to keep your money and I'm going to sue you for liquidated damages too on top of that. But I need a big deposit. Now, the deposit is relative to a bunch of different things, and I'm going to tell you what those things are in a second. But at the end of the day, money talks, BS walks. Now, the deposit is relative the deposit that you ask from the buyer is relative to the transaction size and also the amount of money that you're looking to make on a deal. So let's say, for example, that I've got a deal that, I got a deal that I'm buying for 70 grand, selling it for 75. I only got a $5,000 spread, and I don't have that much activity. And the buyer says to me at the last minute, I'm trying to sell this property. I can't seem to sell it. And in the end, I find a buyer and he says, look, I'll put up $2,000. Now, granted, I'd like to get more, but if he says, no, I got a lot of money out, I can't put any more, but I'm good for it. I got no options. It's a small deal. I got nobody else that wants it. And he's giving me a hard time about the deposit. You know what? I'm probably going to do that deal, $2,000 deposit. Let's say that I got a deal, though, however, that I'm selling it at, $100,000. I got a deal that, say, I bought for 100, selling for 150, 160, and I got some juice on that deal. I'm going to make some money on that deal. Now, the buyer says, now, if I've got a deal that I've got some juice on, that means it's a good deal, right? Because if it wasn't a good deal, right, then, I wouldn't be making that much of a spread. So think about that, right? If it's a great deal, then and if I'm making a lot of money, that means it's a really good deal. So I'm going to protect myself. I want to make sure that this buyer performs. So in that scenario, I'm gonna ask for $10,000-$15,000 deposit, especially if I'm giving them a really tremendous deal, because I want to make sure that, hey, there's no issues. I think that the last deal I did, that I think, what was the price? We bought it for $120. Actually bought it for $105, sold it somewhere in the $190s. And I believe the deposit was $15,000, and we were dealing with somebody that we knew was legitimate. But $15,000, nobody writes $15,000 checks just to lose that money. And again, the deposit is really what matters. Now, granted, there are things that you can layer on top of that being the main thing you look at, right? So in other words, are there questions you're going to ask the buyer to determine, hey, are they a legitimate buyer? Do they know what they're doing? Are they familiar with that business? To try to just make sure that buyer is 100% legitimate. However, I would say I would err on the side of the deposit versus what you ask them and their answers, right? Because you can have somebody answer the questions perfectly in the way that you want them in terms of qualifying, and I'll do another video on that. But yet, if they don't put up the money, I would probably say, you know what? I'm not going to do the deal with you. I'm going to sell it to somebody else. Now, if somebody, say, puts up a big deposit, and then their answers, I'm like, I don't know. He says he's doing a lot of deals, but I don't know if he is or isn't, but he wants to put a $15,000 deposit on my deal, then I'm more likely to take that, right? Now, all things being equal, is you just got to make sure that it makes common sense to you. That's the best thing I can say. So, if I've got a deal and I'm kind of considering two buyers, and one buyer I know is a sure thing, and another one I'm just not sure about, even if the other one is giving me a bigger deposit, I'm going to make the decision about what gives me the best chance of closing on the deal. But that deposit, the deposit that the buyer gives to the title company or the escrow company, that is non-refundable, that is hard meaning that there's no contingencies, to me, that is the most important thing, much more important than the proof of funds. I would say, forget about the proof of funds. You get a deposit, all right, that will make sure that the buyer doesn't go away. One last thing is that better than a proof of funds is a hard money lender. So let's say that if there's a hard money lender that is a legitimate hard money lender in your market, and the buyer says, yes, I'm going to get the loan from this guy, I wouldn't take a letter. I would place a call and say, hey, by the way, this guy Jim says he wants to buy this deal. I just want to make sure that he's done business with you. Is he legit? And the hard money lender would say, yeah, man, he's bought like 10, 15 properties over the last 2 years. He's great. Love doing business with him. That's great. That's solid. All right. So bottom line is, a written proof of funds letter that you get, most of those are templates. I would wipe my butt with it. Okay, that's what I would say. I didn't say the ASS word because then YouTube might not like that. But anyway, my opinion is that a proof of funds is absolutely worthless. What do you think?